Add it up, that's me.
How old were you when you did your first MUN?
I was starting off with that. Okay, great. I think I was in ninth grade.
Okay.
So I was 14 when I did my first module night evaluations.
Yeah.
This was in school in Bangalore.
Oh, in Bangalore. So like the final last city of education.
Correct.
Wow. Yeah, I think my first MUN was also in Bangalore or Leeds. Was it my own school's man or not? I don't remember. So, but I only did like 2 because it's a lot of work.
It is a lot.
And we did this before, with the thing. Translating French documents into English to be like foreign policy, I think not.
Yeah, only the people at WeMo, I think, were thinking about shit back then in 2013.
Gosh. So, what did you think about it? How was your experience like?
I was actually forced into it by one of my teachers. I mean, maybe a better rephrase would be recommended. In hindsight, I'm looking at it as forced. I think it was my social science teacher that said, hey, maybe you should try it out. And funnily enough, I said yes without really knowing what modern unification was.
Okay.
And I was an ignorant kid back in like ninth grade. There's very little going outside, like happening in my life outside of school and just my academics. And I think there was an orientation that typically happens with MUN, where they put all the kids in one class and they try to explain how the world works, which I think is kind of idiotic. And surprisingly enough, I was assigned North Korea and in the Human Rights Council.
Oh, wow.
So there was very little leeway that I had to even figure out what modern imagination was. And I think I quickly learned that that's not for me.
Okay.
One, because it's like very performative to me.
Right.
Sort of intellectual masturbation of sorts. Where there's just a bunch of random ninth graders discussing how to solve human rights crisis out of a classroom in Sajapur. There's just something oddly funny about that, I think.
So when you put it like that, I mean, yes, it is quite pretentious, but
just us and Rashmi ma'am discussing how North Korea should solve the human rights problem. And it just seemed like there was no real objective, It didn't feel fruitful in a way that a lot of the activities I chose to do at that time felt for me. And not a big fan. And that was my first and last MUN. Decided very early on in life that I would not be the performative guy. And here we are. Still my last MUN.
What are the other activities you did that you found more meaningful?
In school?
Yeah.
So there are 2 criteria for any activity to be meaningful for me. One, I should already be good at it. And second, there should be some semblance of interest or passion for me. Back in school, I think in the same era till about 10th grade, it was always football for me. I think a lot of my time outside of school was spent playing football, training for the school team. I think those are the only 2 things that I did, like academics and football. I think the other hobbies that I sort of developed came very later on in life, where I had a little bit more time to explore my interests. At that point of time, it was just these 2 things.
School team, did you play state level matches?
District level, yes. State level, I mean, I was there, but I don't think I went for the game. This is also during exam times, and it's a tough conversation. And it was in Bhopal, I remember this. And I also remember the conversation, and my parents strictly said, no, you're going to have to study. And there I am, not on a sports podcast.
I mean, I remember my friends also, ended up going to these state level matches. I was on the basketball team, didn't do too many matches, but like, very solid bench strength on the bench. He got subbed in the easier games up the ladder. Up the ladder was like only there if someone got injured. And some of my friends who did end up going to, wherever the matches were at the time. I think it was in Odisha, I'm not sure. some pretty dark stuff happened in the train. I'm told. So, yeah, not particularly safe, even with like a chaperone and whatnot.
I see.
But yeah, I think.
Are you telling me my parents were right? You're going to cut yours, bro. I will not accept that.
I mean, just because it happened once doesn't mean it happens all the time.
So true.
They did also have a blast. Most probably won the match and came. So, good stuff. So you said football and one other thing there. What was
It's academics.
academic?
Yeah.
And were you like always academically inclined growing up?
Not in a very mindful way. I think till about 10th grade, I didn't really think about academics as something that I needed to perform at because it came very naturally to me. It didn't feel like I was spending more time than I should kind of learn stuff, at least from an exam point of view. But I do remember clearly that I was very curious to learn about what the next grade syllabus was. And I still remember, I think I was one of the earliest users of Khan Academy in India.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And I just discovered it, I don't know how. And I had like this insatiable curiosity to learn trigonometry. And no idea why. I mean, there was no reason for me to think, hey, this is cool. But it just seemed abstract enough in a way that I felt like, hey, I'm going to learn this. And I started taking all the lessons on Khan Academy, and I finished that. And by the time I got to, I think 9th or 10th grade, when trigonometry actually starts in like your CBSE syllabus, I fully knew what was happening. So like I think that one chapter during whenever it was there in my school academics, I fully breezed through that. So a similar stuff happened, like I think post 10th grade, where I spent a lot more time towards microeconomics, macroeconomics, a lot of business stuff, again from Khan Academy. This was in sort of simultaneously with my academics as well. But the difference between the trigonometry one was that it was directly leading to what I was going to study in school the next year.
Right.
But I think my interest became a lot more varied and diverse after that.
Makes sense. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine like a kid willingly getting themselves through trick. Shout out to Sal for creating that platform.
And it was free. Can you imagine that was free? It still blows my mind that there's like resources out there that are just available free to everyone.
Yeah.
And even YouTube, right? At that point, I don't think there was very high quality content on YouTube. Khan Academy was the first curated sort of learning structure that I came across that I felt like taught these subjects to me in a way that I understood, It felt like I was talking to someone who was genuinely interested in trying to explain stuff to me. As opposed to like, hey, read this paragraph, you have to underline this World War II ended in 1934. 1945, sorry, I remember my history. Yeah, so it ended there. And then, it just feels very exam-oriented rather than from learning perspective, which I didn't really like about school. Coming back to your question on like academic stuff, post 10th grade, I feel like I got into the groove a little bit more from, okay, I need to perform in my studies. And I attribute that to being part of the JEE courses, JEE sort of prep, like most people, I think, of my batch at that time. And there's very little options if you're smart and intelligent. I don't think you have the power of choice at that age. So I went for JEE coaching, and that was super hectic, super intense. And I remember the day, I think we had our first test like 2-3 weeks after the school started. And till then I hadn't taken anything seriously. There was just classes. I was just attending kind of like I went to school in 10th grade. And when the results came out, it was kind of shocking for everyone else and me. There was a very clear gap between me and the second marks on the list.
Right.
And at that school, that was the whole point of that school. So I went to Narayana, which is like their only purpose in life is to churn out JEE rankers. And they put this twist out on a public notice board saying at every exam, right? Like, this is where you stand in life this week. And that was a very, very humbling reality, I think, for most students. But luckily for me, I ended up at top during the first exam. And that, I think, shifted my confidence a little bit and like changed my perspective of how I think about myself academically. And fast forward 2 years, I had like a lot of celebrity status in the school, and I put a lot of shit as well. And yeah, I exploited that to the max. But yeah, like there was just I got special treatment, and that felt good. I liked the attention. I liked the fact that I could get away with a lot of things that people were being suspended for. Yeah, I should think that I was a kid that just studied and took home his ranks. I like pushed the limits a little bit. So yeah, I think I did that in 12th grade, and I went to college. I went to NIT, and first year of college was a big reality check for me because you have people who are exponentially smarter than me in the same college, right? And suddenly there was another reality check that happened that, hey, this is not, you're not the smartest guy in the room or the college. And it took me like a few weeks to just recover from that shock, I think in first year. But yeah, I think that went well. I think that's where I stopped associating myself with my academic performance in maybe like the first semester of college.
I'm sure that was like bittersweet.
Yeah, more bitter than sweet.
I think, yeah, makes sense. So what was dealing with that realization like? I mean, if it took you a few weeks to process it, sure it wasn't like easy.
I know, man. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't because I was lacking. That was the hard part. I still did my best, and I thought that I'm doing great. And then when the results came out, I remember there were people that just got insane marks. And I was like, hold on. Is this possible? I didn't know we were aiming for that. And that was a big reality check for me. And like that put me in a weird place, right? Because I felt cornered in a way that I was trying my best to get out of that corner, but it felt like people were just so much ahead of me. And I sort of navigated that by pivoting a little bit, like I've done multiple times in my life. Whenever I'm sort of pushed into a corner, and that worked out well. Yeah, that's how I dealt with that. It was hard, but it was also humbling, and it I think was a very good catalyst for me to discover my next personality.
It's interesting you say you pivoted when you're cornered, which is so realistic as opposed to like a show like Suits saying break down the wall. And then as like an unsuspecting teenager, you think, oh, that's so cool, oh my God, comfort and whatnot. But step into real life and it's, you're not easier upset than that. But
you have to accept that you're a gazelle and not a cheetah.
It takes an enormous amount of effort and I don't know, a lot to just be a cheetah or a tiger in life. And truth is, most people aren't. And it's also because no matter what you do, there are going to be millions of people out working and outpacing you. So, yeah, I think I want to come back to, you saying you did trig before it was even a thing. And I'm just trying to think if you were in school today, how much more you could have learned with like, AI on demand that's solving problems, roadblocks, and also that you were learning from possibly the best teachers in the world that were at Khan Academy, right? Because I think that was by design and very intentionally constructed to make sure that the people who are putting out the content aren't like Tom, Dicks, and Harry's, but two subject matter experts who had like a knack for communicating. And I think we saw that wave in a more monetized way in India with like the EdTech story, although that has fizzled out quite a bit. But I think a lot of IIT brains have dedicated good parts of their career to making content. It's sad that it's not publicly available even after the company shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think that if we were in the West and there was like company going out of business that had like heaps of proprietary content that's not monetizable now, they would make it publicly accessible?
I don't think so. I think capitalism works the same in all countries. Yeah, I think that's what I also like about money and capitalism in general is that the rules are very clear, right? It's just meritocracy driven.
Yeah.
And it just makes it easier to make decisions and makes the playing field a lot more predictable. And I don't think it's different in the US versus India. In fact, there are more high-profile cases of sort of content being made public in the US than in India, right? Like take MOOCs, for example, massively open online courses. Like the open coursework from MIT, for example, one of the earliest sort of OCW licensed content that was out there. That is such a massive step towards making like education public, right?
Yeah.
I was a 14-year-old sitting in Bangalore in Whitefield, learning from Walter Lewin, who was probably one of the best physics teachers in the world, right? And in a classroom, he wasn't teaching me; he was teaching MIT students, and I was in the classroom, And I feel like that is also a very distinct experience than Khan Academy, where it feels like Sal is sort of teaching you,
Yeah.
and he's writing down and like he's sort of explaining things in a way that is designed to make you understand. But on the other hand, it's just you're just sitting around in a classroom where the smartest students and the smartest professors are just having a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting in itself. And to this day, whenever I sort of want to just chill out, I do go back and watch like MIT OCW videos, as nerdy as that sounds. I think I was watching a Richard Taylor video on financial markets last week. I think he was talking about, that's how I remember the Markov's efficiency from
Okay.
right? Because I was recently just watching
it makes sense.
yeah, it's just great to have that kind of knowledge publicly available. India, I think recently has started with NPTEL, I think like a few years ago, which kind of helped me when I was in college, but it's nowhere near the standards that I think MIT puts out content for.
Yeah, I mean, NPTEL is the same thing that IITs and IIMs put up.
Yep.
I watched like one or two videos, and it felt like they've hired editors from like the previous generation.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, it's not bad, but it's just very outdated. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that matters to most people because the average kid still has like attention deficit, and we're comparing that content to Insta Reels, for example, right? So feel like if the bar of the editing and all isn't raised, it's difficult for there to be distribution. That said, it's good that I think some of the content was published in regional languages.
Mhm.
So now that kind of even levels the playing field further. One of my friends who was a Marathi guy, when he was learning to code, he watched Udemy courses, and whenever he wouldn't understand anything, he'd transcribe it, the prof, page, and put it in Google Translate and then understand.
Mhm.
So he was a very high agency kid. Most kids in product.
Yeah.
I think some amount of regional content or mixed content would address those kids, and if there were students who want to climb out, they can't really blame on lack of availability on content. So moving on to like 10th grade, you said you were doing microeconomics more, right? So did that lead into any foray into investments or stock market earlier than?
So I was interested in stock markets since I was 14, probably. I remember memorizing the ticker symbols on CNBC that used to run on TV. And it just got me into it was just a world that was very different from my day-to-day, right?
Yeah.
And it got me very excited to just understand what's out there and what these numbers mean and stuff like that. So I remember, I think this was the summer break after 10th grade. I think I spent, I was between 9th grade and 10th grade. I'm not really sure which summer that was. I spent like a good 3 months just building like an Excel virtual trading model. That was as simple as just, hey, I look at a ticker, I mentally make a note of, hey, I bought it at this price. And like, I don't know, after 30 minutes, I'll be like, yeah, I'm selling at this price. I was to note down buy price and sell price. I'll be like, I earned this much profit today, or I lost this much money today. And when I did that for 3 months, I assumed that I would find a pattern to it, but I couldn't. And that kind of ignited like a fire in me to like understand why these things move the way they do and what these numbers actually mean, right? And I think even today, like grown-up adults can't explain. I mean, I don't think people in finance sometimes can explain why stock prices behave the way they do. And yeah, like that just put me onto a journey which led me to microeconomics, understanding how the economy functions, like what will government play in these things, capitalism for that matter. And yeah, it just got me to like understanding what the business world and the finance world were all about. And that was my next personality that I developed in college when I pivoted from my academically oriented engineering student to finance pro.
Yeah, and that might have been something, kind of cool because you're in an engineering college and not as many people are financially literate or informed or aware. So what came out of being like the cool fin bro at college?
Good question. I think I thrive on just not being part of the herd, I think. I think that's like a core aim. Like a core motivation for me after like making money, I think, is just to be a little different in a way that I think, not be different for the sake of it. But like there are some things that I like doing that are just not popular. And I like doing those things. And finance at that point came like sort of filled that gap for me in my life. And I went super deep into like understanding the mechanics of like the theory behind finance, right? Think time value of money, and like something as basic as compounding, what interest rates are, why should they even exist, what opportunity cost means. A lot of the stuff that I in fact use on a day-to-day basis today, more than trigonometry. And yeah, I think I did that. And that just gave me like a new identity, right? It made me feel special in a way that I wasn't feeling the first few weeks in college. And that worked out well. I ended up taking up MBA courses in college. I taught finance to my peers. I used to take seminars in lecture halls after school hours, college hours. I also ran a fund out of my college. So that just went into like the finance bro sort of journey a little bit.
Leaned quite deep into it.
Leaned quite deep into it. And luckily enough, my grades didn't suffer too much. Otherwise, it would have been a problem.
Yeah.
But luckily, I could salvage my grades to a point where no one could take offense at my inclination towards finance.
Yeah, I think it's nice that you didn't wait for like the opportunity to present itself for you to learn finance and kind of just went with it and applied what you were learning. I'm sure there are like a lot of people that do a lot of learning but keep it to themselves. But yeah, nice to know that there are like now maybe 30, 40, 50 more financially literate people who started the journey in literacy science, the seminars you ran. So what were the market conditions like when you were deploying funds?
Good question. The first stock that I ever bought was Marico, which was a good stock to buy, I think, because it's a nice high return on equity company, high brand value, just a very stable stock. So the fact that I didn't lose money in my first stock actually kept me going. But I also didn't make too much money off it like immediately. I feel like I made money over that like over 3 years. But my first actual dopamine hit came in my first year when I was getting to like the theory of finance and stuff, I was also researching the markets and trying to understand what to invest in. And for some reason that I can't explain why today, I didn't buy the first stock I saw.
In what sense?
Like typically, if I were to get into like stock markets today, I feel like I would just go and buy something and see what happens.
Okay.
But I think when it came to like putting real money in, like when I actually wanted to put like a decent amount of money, and I think at that point I'd saved like bit pocket money here and there. I'd accumulated about like 20 grand or something like that, and it's 20,000 rupees.
Noted.
That's the difference between U.S. education and India education. Someone from some Stanford kids could say $20,000 and lower it bad, and I'd be like, why wasn't it $1 million? For me, 20,000 rupees was a great deal of money back then.
Yeah, it went all the more further than it does now.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. And yeah, market conditions. So I think this was 2015.
Okay.
And this was the time, I think, when China's GDP was slowing down. And it was like the first year in a long series of years where their GDP numbers didn't hit the expectation. And there was this whole commotion in the market of, steel demand is going to go down. China's never going to grow again. Manufacturing's taken a hit. The world is going to shit. I mean, it was just a very panic mode, right? And as naive as I was just going through the stocks at that point of time. And this is a company called Vedanta that caught my attention. Trading at ridiculously cheap prices. It was trading for less than its book value that I remember. I think like 0.6, 0.8 book value or something that it was trading at. I was like, it has more assets than what it's trading for. It's definitely going to make money. That's all my decision was, And so it was one, the fact that it had more assets on its book than what it was trading at. And the second is that the fact that GDP numbers was like 6% and not 8% didn't seem world-ending to me. I saw that they were already doing better than the US, for example, which was growing at I think like 1-2% back then. And I was like, okay, this doesn't seem like a bad decision to make. And I just doubled down. And I put all my 20 grand on that.
Oh,
and I think for like 8-9 months, I don't remember the time frame, tripled my money with that.
okay.
And I don't think I invested anything in that time frame. I just only check with Alta, like keep track of news related to the steel industry, understand how mining works, understand what drives steel demand, what the balance sheet, income statement for a company like that looks like. So I just went very deep into like the manufacturing space back then. And yeah, luckily for me, it worked out. And I think that gave me confidence to keep going at it, like doubling down on like this investment in stock markets and all of that, and made me feel like I knew more than I actually did back then. And when we were running this fund, this was I think third year or second year of college, and this was when I think Trump came, 2016, when Trump came into, Trump got elected, which was I think a very big shocker to the market. This was when Ireland FS went down, the Yes Bank stuff happened, DHFL had declared bankruptcy. There was just a lot of bad things that were happening in the market back then. And it was not a great year to get into investing. It would have been a great year if I was sitting on a lot of cash and had to deploy it.
Yeah.
It was a bad time to be already deployed and watching my stock go down, which I didn't have the foresight to do, I think, back then. That taught me a lot of lessons as to what type of companies do well in like a bad market, for example. And just not a lot of learnings, I think, from that era, which made me a lot more conservative as an investor, or at least more perceptible to risks in the market. Till then, it was all complete dory. I was putting money, I was making money. I was like, man, too easy.
Why do I need a job?
Yeah, why do I need a job? I could just be flipping stocks all day long. And I remember I was in like a mechanics class when the Trump presidency got announced, when the election results came out. And I was watching the market go down and down. I was using my phone class. And I was just like, man, oh shit, I'm losing money right now. Why is this man teaching me about mechanics? Like there was such a dissonance in my head as to should I leave class and fix this, or should I attend this class and I don't know, become an engineer? It was a tough day at work.
Did you end up leaving the class?
No, I did not.
Probably for the best.
Yeah. What would I have done about it?
Oh my gosh. This is, come to think of it, I think there's always something happening in the market. Like you sounding like every, new investor in a bull run ever. And that's kind of what it was until shit hit the fan. But yeah, thankfully, I have the foresight now to sit on capital. So yeah, I've been liquidating quite a bit, quite aggressively, moving to debt because I don't know why Warren has liquidated such a large part of his portfolio. Maybe because he's exiting and he wants to give his successor like clean slate to run investments. Maybe he actually thinks markets are hyper overvalued, which I do feel is the case. But yeah, I think this is definitely not going to be like the lowest valuation stock on Alta. And just right now in the process of identifying stocks to buy at tech evaluation. And I think one important thing is when you get started, you focus too much on the price, but that really doesn't matter. What matters are like the valuation multiples and market cap and so on and so forth. In fact, one of my first guests is like a prolific investor, very young, went to Johns Hopkins. And whenever I talk to him and we're discussing stocks, he always refers to companies in terms of like earning multiples or revenue multiples. And I found that to be like a very pro thing to do. So yeah, I think if you're watching and want to do such investments, you can't compare 300 rupees and 1,000 rupees. And there's a lot more to that.
We could talk for a little bit. So much to say on multiples.
So what are the kind of industries that do well in a bear market, according to your observation?
Essentials.
Utilities,
yeah. Like things that you're going to have to spend money on, regardless of whether, I don't know, your favorite stock is going up or down.
Yeah.
Think like toothpaste, FMCG, utilities, food, right? Like, so can I take names of stocks? I don't know, HUL, P&G, Nestle, Colgate, Palmolive. These are all great examples, and these are all like examples from like when I sort of like shifted my portfolio to more essential goods, non-discretionary expenses. They typically end up going well, and by well, don't expect like a 3x return. It's just you don't move volumes. I think that's a very important distinction in a bear market.
Will not invest in advice.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when the market's down 12%, you're probably down like 3 or you're at cost.
Correct.
You're faring well compared to the overall sentiment.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So speaking of markets, do you think that in school we are kept far in the loop from how economies work or markets work? And by school, I mean middle school, before like economics is introduced as a subject and then 8th or something like that.
For sure. And I don't think even it's a school problem, right?
Okay.
I think it's just, I can speak for India culturally.
Yes.
I think we're not very free market forward from a young age.
Okay.
When I talk to kids outside of India or parents outside of India or like people who've grown up, let's say in the US, for example, I just get a feeling that they were allowed to be a lot more enterprising much earlier on in life, Think of the proverbial lemonade stand in the US, it's a classic example. Here, if you tell your parents ki nimbu juice ka dukaan lagana hai, like they'd be like, bro, what do you?
Have you lost them?
Yeah, I've lost my mind. Go check with mathematics.
Exactly. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, is that what you want to do when you grow up, right? Then you'll be like, no, I want to do trigonometry when I grow up.
It's like make market models. Gosh.
Yeah, I think there aren't enough opportunities for kids to explore that. At least there weren't when I was growing up. And I also didn't come from like a bad school or like in a place that couldn't have allowed for this to happen. It could have very well allowed for this to happen. I think it was just a conscious choice of the people running the place and the society at that point to not let this be a lot more mainstream. And we were talking about this the other day, and where I feel like there were just so many opportunities to be enterprising even in a school scenario, where there's, I don't know, limited capital at play. Like people don't want to lose money, but they just want convenience. Like, for example, if you're a kid who likes to go to the canteen early and your friends come late and there's like a queue that builds up, you can sort of like manage that distribution of food to people and manage that order and be that meter and charge them some money and charge them a premium for that, or I don't know, charge them more premium and deliver it to their tables in class. And I mean, in hindsight, it seems like a great idea, but I thought of it when I was 20. It would be weird if I go back to school and start selling food to kids now.
A lot of security concerns.
Security concerns. So true. That'll be damn creepy.
See, it's cute when you're classmates. It's a little concern if you find the kid trying to make off $5 of like a 13-year-old
I
boy.
hope I find out my life ever comes to that.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah. So yeah, I think now, like, all of these are such great opportunities, right? And I feel like I did try to explore that a little bit. Like, I used to rent out books in school that I used to, or they were just lying around in my house. Not from like, I want to make money off this, but just from like, hey, I paid money to buy this book. I just wanted to pay it back, And not a lot of people around me were thinking like that.
And use that capital to buy more books.
I use that capital to buy more books. Reinvestment.
So then this is actually like a very popular strategy to build assets. Yeah, people do this with real estate. They buy one house somehow, put together, and then, mortgage it, buy the second house, and then they use the cash flow from both the houses to pay off the loan and property. And each additional unit becomes easier and faster to get. Actually, just discussing this with like a friend a few days ago, or maybe it was yesterday. He was not so economically motivated, and when I met him for the first time, he had like a very simple mindset that, hey, I just want to go do like a job for 30 years to lead a simple life. By the end of that, he wanted a Maserati. So my kind of aspirations and the people I exposed him to brought out some of his want to be more capitalistic, and now he actually thinks and cares about these things. So when he discovered this strategy of, taking leverage against assets, he was quite shocked. He's like, oh, this is so easy. I'm like, just you wait for hair market. People don't go bankrupt, because it's so easy. But yeah. So, I mean, did you end up ever wanting to make money off the books, or did you just like recover your money and call it a day?
Recover money and call it a day. I don't think I was thinking in terms of making money out of that business. It was more can I create value for someone, Interestingly, I've gone full circle in life and I've reached the same point again. Okay. Where I'm not thinking about, or at least today, I'm not thinking about how quickly can I make money, or how what multiples can I earn on my capital. I am thinking as the return as being the outcome and the value being provided as an input lever that I control, and I see very deep. And I feel like I was right there in 8th grade doing just that. In between, I took a detour into the world of finance where I was discussing earning multiples and revenue multiples. I think now I've become more simple, man.
Feel like you can do this if you want to once like your bills are sorted, or that you'll live. You don't have to worry, and until you reach such a point, you're back in the race, building assets to pay for your bills, essentially. And oftentimes people just take their time to do that, which is not effective, efficient, or recommend it if you ever want to stop. So yeah, it's quite nice to hear that you're in a place where you could, are not as motivated by a dollar value at the end of the day and want to create value. Shout out to Budi. Shout out to Budi. So at any point of time, was there like a shift from when you really wanted to make a lot of money to realizing that, hey, this is not like the most important thing in that? Or were you always, content? We've established that in 8th grade, you weren't exactly looking to make a lot of money, but I feel like that's a function of you being a child, like most people, and money kind of being like a taboo thing. So,
to clarify, I still think money is the most important thing. I'm just not that much in a hurry to accumulate more than I already have right now. Right now I'm in a place where there are other resources at my disposal that I need to optimize for, like my time, like my mental health, my fun quotient. Basically, am I doing something that I care about? Am I having fun doing it? And I think that in itself is a luxury. I don't think a lot of people are fortunate enough to make decisions that optimize their time, passion, and their mental health. And money is probably the only thing that they optimize for. And I know a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people that just operate out of that. Some of them operate out of the fear of losing money. Some of them operate out of greed of making money. Some of them just don't really know what they're doing and just making money. I feel like over the years, I've become more mindful of what that money allows me to do. And that sort of affects my decision making a lot more today. And all of that, I completely understand from a place of privilege. I understand that there are probably a billion people out there who are not in a position to do that. Like when you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's hard to say that I want to prioritize my mental health and my time to sort of make less money. But I think I have worked quite hard to get where I am and made, I would say, kind of the right decisions at the right point of time, avoided the wrong decisions. And fortunately, going fine for me. I do okay for myself. So could be doing better. Always more money.
Yeah, who masks the competition?
Yeah, I don't look at it like. When I was younger, I used to think of this as a competition. Do I have more money than other people, or like, can I be the richest person in Bangalore? Like things like that used to motivate me. But I think I have sort of grown out of that because now I like money for the sake of accumulating money and not from what it allows me to purchase or live like, because I'm already living at the lifestyle that I'm happy with if I live like for the rest of my life. Okay. I buy things that I'd be okay buying if I'm 60. I'm okay traveling like I'm traveling today, like when I'm 60. So I feel like I've reached like an equilibrium lifestyle that I would like. Even if things go to shit, I think I can still maintain this lifestyle. And that's not a function of how much money I have, but it's a function of like self-realization that there are not a lot of things that I can purchase with money that give me the sort of contentment or happiness that that I earlier think it would provide,
Case in point, your Patagonia.
My Patagonia jacket, yes.
True. Wow.
Yeah.
That good to hear. I think you're very close to what is required for retirement. After retire, because there are heaps of people who continue to work till the day they die, but essentially this is the kind of spot you want to be in when you're nearing retirement, so that you're okay with the lifestyle that you're leading and you're in a position to be able to maintain it for yourself.
Yeah, and also like from a long-term perspective, I think I just have a lot of safety nets, like my parents are kind of doing okay for themselves. I don't have to support them.
That's
so there's no cash flow. Yeah, there's no cash flow that goes to them. They're fully self-sufficient. My dad's retiring next year, so he's not fully out of a job.
Okay.
And I think they have enough savings to carry them through the rest of their lives. And I feel like they've also accumulated enough so that I don't have to worry too much about paying my rent after they go, So all of that allows me to take risks that 99% of people won't be able to take. And I'm very, very aware of that privilege that I have. So I can afford a Patagonia jacket because I know my retirement's kind of covered, I suppose.
I'm not going to be working for food at any point, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, unless the entire world goes to shit, which is then everybody's problem, not just ours.
And that's not to say that I've not worked hard or I've not earned my own money. I would say 99% of the money that I have today is just the one that, what I have made working. And just all this thing. But outside of that 100%, I think there's a little bit of buffer that I have accumulated because of my parents.
Are you an only child?
I am an only child, yes.
Okay,
and
no splitting.
Yes. And I have a very good relationship with my parents by design.
I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the motivation.
It wasn't too, but yeah, last worked out that way.
He was just a them glad. That's not what I was like. Wow. So, how have you liked your career thus far before schooling?
I would have liked to be more mindful with my decisions. I think I'm someone who takes very impulsive decisions in life. Luckily, they work out most of the time. But I feel like I rationalize and build a narrative around it after the decision is taken.
Okay.
And I'm driven largely by what I'm feeling at the moment, or what phase of life I'm at, or what new shiny object is in front of me. I'm very prone to making decisions along those lines. Career has been fairly rewarding, I think. I started working out of college. I got placed in ExxonMobil out of college. That gave me a sense of what it's like to work at a large establishment, right? And I think at that point they were in the top Fortune 5 or something. So it couldn't get bigger to know that, hey, what does a bigger company operate like? And surprisingly, I hated it.
Surprise. Every millennial Gen Z ever.
Yeah. Then I'm definitely Gen Z. Don't put me in millennial category.
Noted.
And yeah, I remember there was this. I was pulled aside by one of my managers during training, and he told me that if you stick around for 20 years in this company, you could really rise to the top. And that scared the shit out of me. I was like, I don't know, if someone in my place would have been extremely excited that it's word of affirmation from a person from a position of authority. But I was just like, 20 years. That's as old as I am right now. You may tell me that I've lived my entire life in this company. And that really scared me. And I think on that day, I decided that I wanted to leave the company. And I didn't stick around for long. I think I lasted for another 4 or 5 months.
Oh, okay. Short stint.
No, after that. I think I'd only been there for 8-9 months when the conversation happened. And another 4 or 5 months later, I quit and I came back to Bangalore, joined the startup. Was sort of I was part of the founding team. I was doing founders office stuff. Did everything from product engineering, design, growth, investor relations, raising funds. Pretty much everything it was sort of scaling and building that startup I helped out with. And that gave me a very different perspective on it. What else is out there, And that was quite a large shock coming out of ExxonMobil, where it was very shielded and you could always point to your manager and be like, hey, if they didn't give me the right set of instructions or this process didn't allow me to do it.
Still a very classroom driven kind of structure, hierarchy and everything to play.
Yeah, and at that point, I think I was 22 then. I had spent 5 years in markets already by then. So I had like a fairly nuanced understanding of balance sheets and what makes a company good and what makes a business run. I don't know if I should be saying this on part. I don't know if anyone from previous company will be listening to this, but I had a strong feeling that the vertical that I was in had to be shut down because it was clearly not going anywhere. And it pained me beyond belief to know that there were people making a lot of money at the top of the chain, not seeing this picture. Probably because they've been there 20 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know, I'm probably going to lose my job.
Hey, you can't say, hey, this division that I run is bullshit.
You know what I should do today? Maybe I should shut this thing down.
And either go look for another job or try to reinvent the entire division and do more work.
Yeah. And that's the hill I would die on. I think that business is still going and I still think it needs to be shut down because nothing about that business works. No one wants that product. The economics don't work. The company is not investing enough money in it. The sales processes are all over the place. Like, it was a product, it was a pre-PMF product. I couldn't articulate it back then, but now I can articulate it. Did not have product market fit.
Imagine what good distribution does to even free products, right?
Yeah.
One of these podcasts or something I was listening to, or maybe it was another, I'm not sure, said that first-time founders are product focused, second-time founders are distribution is focused. Yeah.
People focused, third time.
Yeah, third-time people focused. And then just goes to show, like, if you left back then, companies still running, products still running. And I think this is something you also said in your exit interview. I've been sick, quite guts to say that straight.
I mean, I didn't have anything to lose.
To the manager. Did that have any consequence?
No, nothing. It was actually with a foreign colleague.
Okay.
So the HR team actually sat out of Singapore, I think. So I told this to them, and they were kind of taken aback a little bit. I think kind of caught them off guard with that.
Yeah.
But worked out by it. Not the first or the last time I've said something kind of weird in an interview. Yeah.
I mean, this is a very low stick interview.
That's true, yeah.
What is...
Well, I wasn't listening to this. I've done this a few times otherwise.
Still God. So, were you based out of Bangalore when you were doing this job?
Yes. I was in Bangalore for the first 6 months.
Subject.
And then I was sent to Gurgaon for after my training period. And that was hard on me because I didn't speak a word of Hindi back then.
Mm-hmm.
And that put me in a super uncomfortable position. I'm someone who really likes predictability. Like, I've been to the same restaurant about 70 weeks in a row now.
Oh my God, that's insane.
I'm that person, and like, if you take me out of that scenario and say, hey, why don't you go somewhere else and figure this stuff out? And you're not really qualified to do it. And that really surprised me a little bit. And this also coincided with COVID.
Okay.
So wasn't really having the best of time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only thing that I think take away from that stint was I learned. I guess
Okay. Must have been tough operating out of Gurgaon without, having command over.
Yeah. And surprisingly, people say, "Aur batao" a lot in Gurgaon.
Yeah.
When there's nothing to say, or even if there's something to say, there's always "aur batao" and "chai piyoge," which is kind of what all conversations keep circling back to. And had a lot of chai there.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I'm sure you wish you learned Hindi Bombay.
Yeah, that's true. I think learning Hindi in Delhi, I think, is level 2 Hindi.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, you need to be proficient at a level where the other person does not understand English.
Yeah.
Or like understand as much English as you do Hindi, and you can't converse with that.
Yeah.
Bombay's much more of a cosmo, so it's
Correct.
far easier to somehow navigate and pass through without proficiency.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if this is a recent thing, but all the billboards and shop names are all in Hindi now. So I mean, they do have English also, but not very used to reading Hindi. And when I go to Bombay, I just look at the words and I'm like, why is my mind not reading? Read. It's just not as effortless as reading English because I've been doing that for like 15 odd years. So like second nature. In fact, there was like one, I think, experiment where people were like given some text to read, which was in a different color than what was it? And so, for example, they wrote blue in a shade of orange. And the experiment was you need to say, when you look at the sheet, say the color that you see and not the words. And more often than not, people said the word and not the color. So it just goes to show that if you keep training your mind to do one thing, it instinctively will just go and do that.
System one thinking.
Yeah. Have you heard of the concept of second grade? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you what my understanding of the second day is. I mean, you can correct me if we're on the same page on what it means.
I don't know it well enough to correct you, but I'll listen to your thoughts.
Okay, cool. So my understanding of the second layer is that there's one system to thinking where there's like a more deliberate sort of thinking process that happens. And there's like a whole system that you form outside of your brain where you store your information, right? Like that you use to access stuff whenever you need to. And there are concepts on how to retrieve that memory and stuff like that. But the second way, it's sort of like a way, think of your brain as like files and folders in a computer. How do you arrange them in a way that you can find information as quickly as possible in a situation that you need to? For example, when you ask me what I think about a second brain, my mind's probably just going through my files and being like, hey, where have I read? I've read this book called The Second Brain. And that's where my context for this comes from. I feel like I've also read like a summary of that book on YouTube. So I know even if I haven't really fully registered that book, there's also like this sort of thing this visualization that's in my head of this person explaining this book to me. So there are these distinct sort of nodes in this mind map that I've found about this concept that helps me talk about this in a setting where like I wasn't prepared to talk about. And there are physical sort of, not physical, there were physical sort of repositories in the past where you would store this information, think libraries. Today there's Notion or like any sort of digital database where you can put all of these thoughts and retrieve it in wherever you need to, right? Like Obsidian, I think, does like a really good job at this, where it creates a graph there's a graphical representation of your notes. And they're all like sort of like a mind map, which are connected based on their relation, right? If you're writing, let's say, a journal about your spouse, and you also have like a wedding planning with your spouse, they would sort of be linked together because it understands that they're both nodes that are close to each other. So it helps you form like a mental map. Like that's the most visual form of a second brain that I can think of.
I think you see. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of Obsidian, never got around to using it. I'm a very powered Notion user to the point where I'm still using my college email ID for the free additional credits or whatever usage limit. And I remember seeing a pop-up this one day that, hey, you've used your blocked how many ever that was. And I'm like, I thought they removed this the week. And I was going through somewhat of a mini existential crisis because the kind of shifting out of Notion was not something I thought was possible, and I didn't really want to tie an expensive $60 a month at that time. So $60 a year, not a month.
I don't know how much it costs.
$5 I think. Is it? Yeah. Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah. Last I remember, I checked, probably was $5 a month. So okay, do I really want to pay 7,000 rupees for a notes app?
Right.
Answer was maybe not.
Maybe reposition it as a second brain. Maybe. It becomes a lot more valuable to you.
Yeah. In hindsight, yeah. This foresight as someone as an early teen, still with no pocket money as such.
Yeah.
Not something I can go and ask.
For sure.
money for it. But yeah, I'm so glad I got a student email ID by that time so that I didn't have to stop using Notion. Although I wonder what will happen to me if one day I just can't access my Notion. So go back and now make a plan B. Thanks.
I'll start paying for it.
No, I mean, like, once I get logged out, what if I get hacked? So I've gotten hacked out of my Twitter.
I see.
And it was like 9 years of no activity. One morning at 8 o'clock something, I received an email that, hey, are you trying to log in? This is like your security code. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to log in. But somehow someone switched on two-factor authentication, and then I couldn't log back. I was now wondering what people are going to do that had hacked my account with the 50 followers I had back in the day. So I'm like, in order to make sure I'm not misrepresented, I need to log back in and check whatever is down. By this time, Elon had fired 70% of the sort of, let's just say, team, and support was painfully slow. It took them more than 2 months to restore my access to my account. And the fact that I had signed on with Google just made it even more difficult for them to do it. Because they're like, hey, you need to log in with your user ID and password to be able to, for us to reset your 2FA. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. I don't know my password. And I just given up on it. I'm like, okay, whatever it is, like, we'll see if this comes and bites me in the ass. Thankfully, it didn't. That's good. One fine evening, I saw an email that, okay, we've switched off to FA, go do your thing. A lot of days I went through DMs and through posts, they did nothing. And I'm like, thank God. Like, I get my account was compromised, but it could have been worse.
Yeah.
Now I use it because of that incident. At one point I was thinking, is this strategy to get people back out the platform?
But growth hack.
But the most successful
That makes you so many ideas.
I started on. So, like, the consensus among growth folks is just focus on acquisition. Resurrection is like almost always the lowest ROI targets to run. And I'm like, yeah, I think they've cracked resurrection. At least for people like me. So I had 300 posts in the 9 years. And in the 1 year since that incident happened, I have like 1K. So it really worked. It just so happened it coincided with at a time when 2 of my friends were like insisting I get back on the Twitter. So when I was like, okay, if it's not an option anymore, I can't do it. I wanted to do it all the more. So apart from Ubi, is there anything that keeps you busy until?
Sure. I run this company called the Pickles Company.
Okay.
So we make cryptic crossword puzzles under Crypticals.
What is Crypticals?
Crypticals is like, it's unofficially an arm of the Tickles company, which makes cryptic crossword puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
And events around cryptic crossword puzzles. Think treasure hunts, murder mysteries.
Fun stuff.
Fun stuff, like crossword picnic.
Intellectually
Fun stuff. Yeah, that's exactly my jam. And there's another arm called Quizticals, where we host trivia nights and quizzes all around Bangalore. So that's something that keeps me busy at least once or twice a week. So once or twice a month during the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Just for me to like sort of kick into a different gear and not think about like work, but still kind of working. You really think about it. But yeah, just a good change from my regular routine.
Moving on to the final segment, we're going to do a little more philosophical, psychological, reading question. I think let's start with, if you could redesign your school experience and the system that education was imparted for you, what would be like the key changes you'd make?
Got it. And this is also a very personal question, right? Because it's different for different people. I would have liked for my education to help them. I think this comes back to another point that we were talking about on how education is sort of delivered, right? Or like educational content is sort of delivered to kids, or at least to me back in the day. School was extremely restrictive, I think, and it wasn't engaging in a way that kept me interested about the topic. I feel like I was always taught to think about a piece of information as whether this would come on a test or not, which I didn't thoroughly enjoy. And to this day, I'm not a big fan of tests. Like just generally, like anything, I'm extremely competitive, but if there's like, I have to be competitive in this 3-hour time period, that doesn't work for me, you know? But yeah, anyways, coming back to that point where I would have liked the content to be more engaging, right? I feel like I have grown a lot more interested in subjects that I learned in school, after school, like history, for example, or like social science, or just science in general. I catch myself watching a lot of physics-related videos or like organic chemistry videos these days. Not from like, oh, I need to like, score high in a test on this, but just from intellectual curiosity, right? Just, way to understand how the world works. And I think that mindset shift is very important, and that was something that was critically missing when I was in school. And luckily, I was also like slightly higher agency, I think, than my peers, where I looked towards other avenues that could satiate this need for me, right? Like Khan Academy is one, like I think MIT OCW is another one, where I actively put out the effort to discover information in a way that I liked consuming, which I don't think a lot of kids are inclined to do, right? Like given the choice, I would rather just be hanging out with my friends, playing football or whatever, playing video games, which I was also doing, by the way. I just took out some time to do this also. So yeah, I would have definitely liked to be more engaging. Second thing I think is we treat education, or at least we treat it, I don't want to generalize, so I would talk only for myself. When I was in school, I think there was a whole flock of sheep type of approach in the education system, right? Where every kid is sort of treated the same, expected that, hey, I'm going to tell you something and everyone understands it in the same way. But I would have liked to be coached more like an athlete. As pretentious as that sounds, I'm no way I was an athlete. But there's just something about training mindfully versus learning, where I think this applies to both curriculars and extracurriculars for me. I think like even when I was playing football, it was very unserious, at least in my school, where it was just like, yeah, show up to practice, play with your friend, do some drills, do some jogging, and that's it, right? When it could have been a lot more about, hey, these are some skills that you need to learn. Like, I think I put more effort into my FIFA manager career than I actually did on the field while playing in school, right? Which is kind of a shame. And the same thing works in like academics as well, where if a teacher recognizes your skill in something, I feel like they should give you the path and the means to become better at it, as opposed to saying, hey, I know you're good at math, why are you flunking history? As opposed to that narrative, it should be like, you're good at math, you can do 12th grade stuff in 8th grade, go do it. History, just learn enough so that you pass your exams. I feel like that's a better way to sort of deal with education, because life works that way, right? Yes. Because I'm not going to be an expert in everything. And like once you're out of school, you're not expected to be the expert at everything. But you're expected very clearly to be good at one thing that you get paid for.
And really good.
And really good at it, right? And so if the expectation is very different from life, why are you teaching your kids something else, right? And it's not like the school is run by kids. The school is run by adults who live in the same world where they have to be really good at teaching. And sometimes they're not. So there's a lot of introspection that they also need to have done. Again, I didn't say need to do, I said need to have done, because in my case. So that's another, I think, approach of thinking about it, right? Like training students as athletes as opposed to, at least don't think of it as education, think of it as coaching. Like, are you coaching kids to be the best versions of themselves? As opposed to, hey, this is some content and I'm going to teach it the same way to everyone. Third thing, I think school prepares you really badly for 99% of things in life, which I think you're expected to just fuck around and figure out yourself. For me, I think that biggest thing has been interpersonal relationships, whether it's romantic, whether it's platonic, dealing with conflict, handling heartbreaks. How do you ask a girl out or ask a boy out, whatever, right? How do you ask someone out? How do you deal with that rejection? And I don't know, man, how to flirt, how to put on some riz. I don't know. I feel like you should learn all of these things in school because you end up realizing that you're not just raising up your girl, but you're also raising up like your manager at some point, right? And when you start thinking of education or learning from that perspective, I think it becomes very, very different. And I wish that I had learned more of people skills in school, which I woefully did not. And another more important thing was, I think, learning about money. For me, it was very self-taught. Again, by virtue of me being a high agency kid, I don't think a lot of people or a lot of kids, or at least in my batch, took that initiative to understand how the world of money works. But yeah, and then when you're like in the outside world, like this whole money stuff just hits you on the face, and you feel like I have no idea what's happening, and I can't even count the number of friends or peers that I have had this conversation with where I'm telling them very basic stuff that I learned in like 9th grade, and they're learning when they're 24, right? And not to any fault of their own, right? They were just not exposed to this information either by their families or by their schools. They've never been in a position where they've had to make decisions about that.
And didn't take much initiative to put themselves there.
And you don't even need to take initiative, right? It's not a problem until you join a job.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to think about CTC and taxes and investments and stuff till you start making money. And for a lot of people, that's around the age of 22, 23 when they graduate from school or college.
No.
I think that is something that another thing that it sort of like underprepared me for. Another thing I think was like just being a little bit more entrepreneurial, I think, which I think is changing today.
Yeah.
I interact with kids from school and undergraduation who are a lot more enterprising because of the vast amount of content that's available, as well as the access to information that's out there with like YouTube, and there are new tools that come out educating kids. And I think kids are also a little bit more high agency, where they're more digitally native, where like my solution to have found information was to ask someone, I think. Maybe I was an outlier to go find Khan Academy, but most people I think in my batch would have been, hey, ask your parents or ask your friends. But I think today kids are a lot more, I will just ask ChatGPT, which is probably like the best teacher out there, I think.
Yeah. But not as because they have an option.
That's because they have an option.
Yeah. And it's honestly unimaginable to me how many curious kids have their curiosity die because they don't get proper responses or are kind of negatively face negative consequences. So it's called negative reinforcement in psychology. And there's this entire study by some American agency which tried to find out what makes kids a genius, or like how do you identify one. And I think what it found was inherently most kids are creative, and throughout school only about 20% of them remain to be creative, because it's just a system where you keep hearing a lot of no, or like the questions are not handled in a manner that promote curiosity. Because in a system where you have to ask someone you're independent of person, you're essentially requiring some bandwidth on their end. And traditionally how things are structured in India, there are like teachers are overworked. So they could not sustainably handle questions for like 30, 60, 80, 100 kids and kind of answer it to a level that it should be. Perhaps, if it is a part of the subject matter expertise, they could give some kind of an idea, but I don't think it's possible to sit through and explain and, encourage more questions.
And if you really think about what the role of a teacher is, right? And I can say this because I've been a teacher in other settings. Like I mentor students especially business school students. And I feel like, and I've asked for them for feedback on why they think talking to me is helpful. And that made me think about my teachers and just teaching in general. Is that the value that a teacher adds, at least in this point in time for me, is not the content of the subject that they explain or teach, but it's rather what their take or their opinion on the subject that is key, right? Because I think information is the same.
Right.
The fact that we can both discuss, let's say, one company's financials, and we could come up with many different outcomes.
Yes.
You could think of it as a sell option. I mean, I could think of it as a buy option. The key is maybe my take on why it's a buy option is a lot more pleasing to a lot of kids, and they think I'm a better teacher. But at the end of the day, we're just looking at the same piece of paper, same set of numbers, which is how teaching works, right? Like if someone is teaching, I don't know, the French Revolution or Nazi Revolution or the Soviet Revolution, the facts aren't changing. What I really care about is whether the teacher thought Goebbels was a good man or a bad man. That's the stuff that you actually remember and take away with you at the end of the day, and not when this war was started or when this war ended, or what are the three pieces of clothing that Jacobians wore, like fucking nonsense, right? I care whether she thinks it was a hideous costume or not. That's the stuff that you're like, oh yeah, this teacher is kind of funny. I like that they have opinions.
Yeah.
And to a large extent, I think teachers' opinions relate to which kid should not be talking in class. And I think that's quite shameful, right? I think they have a lot more potential. And on a weirder take, I think people without interesting opinions on topics should not be teachers, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're just going to be dull and end curiosity or kind of make things not pleasing, then you're very much doing a service than anything else. That's actually quite an interesting take. I feel like there are very, very few teachers who can actually have an objective take with presenting both sides. So sure, maybe there are arguments, or there are some general consensus, like say Hitler was a net negative, but there are also things that he did that helped the population of the time, which I feel like is very underplayed. Not saying his methods are right or what he did was important. It's just that there is another side to the story that I think is very conveniently kind of left out, because then it becomes conflicting and it's more difficult to manage. So, I think it's also important for learnings to be well-rounded, and there should be turncoat kind of activity, because otherwise you're kind of mugging somebody else's opinion or general consensus, and free will and free thinking or independent thought goes for adults.
Yeah.
So come on. Yeah, I mean, I haven't learned enough about the topic to form an opinion, but I recently found out that, there's a different side of things. And it's very interesting because if you learn history in a different part of the world, you look at things from a very different perspective, right? For example, colonial history is not taught in the UK, right? So I feel like that makes them far less sensitive to the atrocities that were committed. And maybe to a small extent, it makes us slightly more sensitive to the atrocities that were committed, because there's this very single-sided narrative that claimed. And I'm not debating that it's a good thing that happened, but still, I mean, yes.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about history, right? It's only written by the winners or the losers. More winners than losers. But everyone in the middle, which is majority of the population, doesn't get any say in what history portrays itself as. And I think history is a very, opinionated by its nature. Even math, for example, right? Today, the way I think of Pythagoras' theorem is when I cross the road. I think about it pretty much every time I cross the road, in fact. Like I thought about it today. Where it's always like, hey, I can go like here and then cross it.
Yeah.
Or I can directly take a diagonal. I'm like, this is always going to be the better path, you know? Like, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity of like teaching social subjects, more sciencey STEM subjects also in that manner, which your opinion ended about, right? Maybe you don't like Pythagoras theorem because he was an asshole. That I would love to know that information. Right? Like I would love to know that, I don't know, Archimedes was just a crazy guy who just came up with some random stuff while he was in a bathtub. Yeah. And people are like, okay, this is great. I mean, sure, the outcome was great, but maybe he was just actually kind of batshit crazy, you know? And now I would remember that Archimedes was, or whatever, I'm probably using Archimedes as a placeholder here. I'm not sure if he was actually that crazy. Maybe let me take a better, more crazy example. I don't know, like you can take like scientists, right? Like take Alfred Nobel, for example. He created TNT. Like we know him for the Nobel Prize. But the fact that he had such an important role to play in, like weaponry and like mass warfare is something that's like woefully under-discussed. Yeah. And we don't even know that because, I don't know, history is written by people who win Nobel Prizes, I suppose. Yeah, like stuff like that. I think it's, even STEM subjects can be opinionated in a lot of way. Yeah, I think, and I think teachers should be more mindful of that. Or at least that's the thing that I bring to the table when I talk about any subject, because I am very painfully aware that they can probably read this text somewhere on ChatGPT that's probably does a better job at explaining it than I do. But what it doesn't explain is what I think of it. You know, like, yeah, maybe I think that Galileo Galilei was wronged by the church. Yeah. You know, rightfully so. I think he was wronged by the church because. Yeah, like you don't get that take from your physics teacher, you know? Yeah. They're just going on about, yeah, he did this experiment where he dropped a feather in a ball and landed at the same time. I think that's fine, cool, okay, yeah.
So, on to the next question. Growing up, who and what influenced you?
Yeah. A lot of different people, I think. I think the first person that I actually looked up to was maybe Warren Buffett or Steve Jobs. Mostly because I was reading their books at the time, and I was like in that place where I was interested in what they were doing as people. Because I remember I got into Steve Jobs when my dad bought us our first iPod. And when I say us, it was one for the family. Yeah. It wasn't just for me. We got a family iPod Nano. And it was such a cool little product. I still think it's one of the coolest products that I've ever used. Right at the score, the 1,000 sounds in your pocket. Yeah, 1,000 sounds in your pocket. And then you just that mechanism of like the scrolling, the stuff is so cool. And the haptic feedback that they had on that pad also was so incredible.
Still Steve's era.
Yeah, still
Steve's Jobs' name was not Steve still.
Yeah.
I just found out like 2 days ago.
And saw that it's still on Twitter.
I think Caleb posted it if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
I lost my mind.
I was adopted, right? Yeah.
No, I mean, I knew that, but I never put two and two together. And I definitely did not think he had like Serene origins.
Yeah.
But
and yeah, so like that was I feel like they were the two influences growing up, and to a large extent, fictionally, it was Gregory House from House M.D. That was one of the first shows that I fully watched that was not on TV.
Absolutely loved that show.
Yeah, it built my worldview for a long time. Not so anymore, but yeah, I think those were the three people that I looked up to, and those are three people that I have posters of in my parents' house. And this, I think, is still, it's still there. Hanging in my bedroom.
I don't know how I had the heart to watch House because it gets pretty graphic at times. I know I could not today, but I think back then I was just going through an era or phase of watching like these medical shows, like watched Grey's Anatomy, almost to like implicated shit, and there's like one or two more shows. So I like how House throughout maintained like a very medically dense script, unlike the other shows that became more about the drama than medicine. So in fact, there was a point where I had to rush somebody into the ER, and I briefed the attending on my observations, and they're like, "Are you studying for NEET? Why do you know this?" And it was like, okay, even more so back then. This was like a couple of years ago. And I was like, "No, I learned this from TV." And the doctor was just laughing. And then he's like, "This is very good observation, very helpful." I mean, I'm going to just double check to make sure it's accurate.
I'm not going to take your word for it.
I'm not going to take your word for it. It's like, but I was so happy that day. I mean, like, as happy as I could have been under these circumstances. But yeah, I'm like, okay, I learned something useful. Turns out, if you don't continue to watch it, you lose your edge.
Yeah.
When it.
I eventually started dating someone from med school.
Okay.
I used a lot of information that I gained from House to
Onward.
stress. I knew what a Guillain-Barré syndrome was, and she was writing a paper on that, and I was like, man, you know what, I know that.
Let me write it. You get a D, but you don't have to do it.
The spellings will be right.
Because I will Google it.
Yeah.
Okay, so given a chance, what would you change about your parents?
About my parents, I would have liked them to come prepared into parenting.
Okay.
I'm the first child, and
I don't change charity.
my question to them was, how do you know what you're doing is right? And they had never educated themselves on how to be a parent. And I bought them a book on how to parent.
Oh, that is crazy. Did they get offended?
For a few minutes.
Okay.
And then they saw the logic in my argument.
Okay.
I'm kind of persuasive.
Yeah. God, shit. If you did not get kicked out of the house.
I remember this was at a crossword. And I was browsing through the shelves. I think this was when I was 13 or 14 or something. And I was like, wait a second. You guys are doing this for the first time. This book might be interesting to you. And like, I was just going through some teenage agony at that point. I'm like, hey, my life is the worst. I don't know, everyone hates me. Like, you know, that kind of spiral. And I was not getting the support I wanted from my parents at that point. Understandably so. Who really wants to deal with the teenage? And I bought them this book. I think it's called How to Parent Your Teens in India or something like that. And specifically for this audience, right? I felt like this book was written for my parents.
Did you read it before you?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't read it. But I recently found out that my parents read it twice. Yeah, I recently asked them like a few months ago, did you read it? And they said, yeah, we read it twice. I'm like, why didn't it fix you? Okay, cut.
Oh my gosh, the guts on this guy.
But yeah, my parents are damn chill. We have like fun conversations like that. They don't get offended on these things. I'm pretty silly like that. Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine what would have happened in like the multiple other cases. It probably would have been a wiser bet to read it yourself. And then see, is this something that I want to happen to me?
I was not super into books back then. I was just into selling.
I get you. Gosh. Have you heard about this person called Frank Passetto? Okay, so since you said you were into selling, like few neurons in my brain fired up, and this person essentially, I think, wrote a book called Don't Fire Them, Fire Them Up. And he was in part responsible for turning around like the lowest performing Xerox office, if I'm not wrong, in the US. And it's very, very interesting how he achieved that. And essentially, you know, all of the things that you hear these gurus preaching, I feel like at some level is inspired from his practices. And which is quite interesting because he did this in the 90s, right? Before the internet was a thing. And very interesting guy. Check him out. You'll have to tag. So who are your oldest friends that you're still in touch with?
The oldest friend that I'm in touch with is Akash. I know him from school, from second grade actually.
Quite a while.
Quite a while, yes. And we've had like our ups and downs. I think we've had like periods where we didn't speak over the years, but we reconnected a few years ago. He's also my co-founder in the quizzing events company at Tickles. So yeah, I mean, he's we hang out a lot. He's also married, so he gives me he's one of the few friends in my circle who's married.
Okay.
They got married pretty early, so that gives me like a fresh perspective on a different perspective on life, I think.
How long has it been? Yeah.
But for him to get, he got married when he was 24, so it's been about 2 years, 2-3 years. And yeah, it's just like nice to hang out with a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a married couple, it's very different to like see how they live their lives and stuff. And the sort of decisions that they have to grapple with where life becomes a lot more serious. Not that I'm implementing any of that, but it's just good to have that information.
Building context in your life.
Yeah.
Back up to your mind.
Correct.
And I think the first 2 years are the hardest is what I've been told or I've heard. And, and there's like an equal part stakeholder that whose whims you need to consider. It can get challenging.
Yeah, but they're a pretty happy couple. Good for them.
To the best of your knowledge.
I'm pretty sure those happy couple.
I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we could use a few more
For sure.
couples around.
Yeah, apart from that, I have like 2 friends from my high school. Neither of them are in India. One of them is an investor in Huli.
Nice.
So yeah, worked out pretty well. And yeah, one of them is Saddam. He's the investor. Pranav is the other guy. He's in the US. So I would say from my school days, those are probably the 3 people that I'm still in touch with. Surprisingly, no one from college that I'm very closely in touch with. Like, sure, I mean, they're acquaintances and we patiently meet like once a year or something, but not someone that they're not my go-to people for life. And most of my friends currently, at least close friends, are the folks that I've found the last couple of years.
Got it. So how do you maintain closeness with these folks that you found?
Correct.
Friendship?
For me, it's always about physical proximity. I think that's a big driver for me to like stay close to someone. The moment, for me, it's also a little bit out of sight, out of mind.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to change that a little bit where I put in more effort to sort of reach out and make conversation or bring them on as investors so that I can become investor update. So I try to solve another problem solver. So I try to like meet them as frequently as possible. And some of my current friends, Ayushi, Puran, they go, we hang out pretty much like twice, thrice a week.
Oh, that's quite frequent.
Yeah. And one of my closest friends, Jayesh, he's also a founder. He lives 30 seconds from my place.
Oh, how convenient.
So like everyone is within like a 2-3 kilometer radius.
You really meant it when you said proximity.
Yeah. The furthest someone is, I live in Kodmangala in Bangalore, and the furthest someone is in Doglore. And I intend to keep it that way. For me, it's, I think, physical proximity and the fact that I could probably just go to their house like in 15 minutes gives me a great source of comfort. And I think that helps me keep the closeness alive. I like to do nice things for them. I cook for them. I make chai for them whenever I sleep over at their place in the mornings, and coffee, Gover's coffee. I feel like I do small acts of service to tell them that I still love them.
Well, it's funny because I, on the other hand, have friends like all over the globe. And
I'm sorry.
Not at all. I mean, I don't know. Thankfully, touch wood, I don't feel very clued out, or I am able to maintain kind of some amount of closeness, and thankfully have settled into this mindset of being able to grow separately together.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes me about like 10 odd minutes at a catch up to resume where we left things off in most cases. So yeah, I think some of like my oldest friends who I'm not very actively in touch with, but would still consider myself close to, one's in Singapore, one's in Netherlands, a few were in the US, recently moved back, a few in the UK. So yeah, physical proximity, I think short. It would take me like a week to get to them. if I had to physically go.
And I also feel like I dedicate or like have like another angle of friendship with most of my friends where they all serve different purposes in my life, right? Like Pawan is like one of my closest friends now. He's my co-founder. Mm-hmm. So like apart from the fact that he's my friend, we also have like another relationship that's going on.
Okay.
And that's the case with like, I think most of my friends in some form or the other. I feel like I give and receive different things from different people, even though they're like same level of friends. And that also sort of helps me stay close to them, I think. And I feel like they can rely on me on certain things, not for others. Yeah.
Got it. Is the life you've crafted aligned with what you wanted?
Oh, tough question. If I say yes to that, I might walk out of here not as motivated. but touch wood, yes. I'm fairly happy with, or at least I wouldn't say I'm happy with, I'm never happy with anything. I'm exactly where 14-year-old me wanted to be. Let's put it that way.
That's a good place to be.
That's a good place to be, yes. I wanted to invest my money. I do that. I wanted to start a business. Done that a few times. I wanted to have friends. I have them. I have a good relationship with my parents. I have them. I can afford my lifestyle. I can do it. And that be more? Yes.
Always your thank you.
Yeah, just on the money part, I think everything else I'm fairly content with. So yeah, I think I'm definitely there where I need to be. Well, if I'm mentally not so much, I think like me personally, I think there's a lot of self-growth that I am currently working on, which I don't think I'm there yet. But it's also not what 14-year-old me had thought about. So yeah, to my 14-year-old me's knowledge, I'm doing just fine. But as a 27-year-old me, I think there's more what I could be doing.
Fair enough. How do you decide whom to trust when the stakes are high?
I'm a terrible people person.
Okay.
Like I have terrible judgment, I think.
Okay.
Simple answer is fuck around, find out. That's how I deal. Yeah.
What would you like people to misunderstand less about you?
That I have full control over my life and that I've got my shit together. I don't. At least to someone that I meet for the first time or an acquaintance, I think I've trained myself to be performative in a way that it feels like I'm fully in control of everything that's happening around me. But not so much if you peel away a few layers. And that naturally makes people assume that I don't need help or I don't mean words of endearment, for example. But sometimes I do, and people don't like unless I specifically open up and tell them that this is something that I'm going through. I don't think anyone sees that version of me, and they mistake me for someone who's got things developed.
Well, little coconut.
Little coconuts,
Thanks for saying.
to my Mandu roots.
Well, did you do like the Satya, the last Onam?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I can. I'm not a huge foodie.
Okay.
Whenever I can, I eat a lot of Kerala food. I come mostly from Chennai, but like there's Palakkad, Kerala, that's in me. So yeah, yes, I do enjoy Kerala food a lot. That's my number one cuisine.
Yeah, I remember I was on this road trip and there was this small house on one of these highways that had kind of converted that ground floor into a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, we don't have Wi-Fi, right? And so, but the food was so good. And I absolutely love the fact that Madhus use coconut oil.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it isn't as common everywhere else. I mean, like, sure, I get, like, logically why.
More supply.
Exactly. Like, logically, sure, it, like, makes sense about why cultures and habits are the way they are. But, yeah, man, I really wish more people knew how to cook or prepare food with coconut oil.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm now craving the dosa that I had in that place so many years ago. I don't think I've had good coconut oil dosa now, but yeah, something to put on my checklist.
Yeah. New Year resolution.
Oh gosh, I typically start my New Year's resolutions 2 weeks before New Year, so that like by the time the year ends, I'm at full swing. This year hasn't been as resolute and the others, that is a word. But yeah, if your younger self were watching, what would surprise them about you today?
So that's what would surprise them about me today? What? What? This will need so many topics. This part.
Yeah, that's okay.
What would surprise them the most? I'm good with the ladies. Which may have fun answer.
It's a good surprise.
It's a good surprise. Yes. No. Yeah, I mean, I think similar to the other question where I would assume that, no, actually what would surprise me is I would have assumed that I seen like everything is sorted in my life. Like when I was 14, I thought by the time I reached 25, or like when I looked at 25 rows then, I thought they had it all figured out. And sitting here at the right age of 27, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but also have the foresight to know that who really has any idea what they're doing. Like one parent does. Maybe that book really helps. Maybe that's something that people should all kids should recommend to their parents. Yeah, that's what would surprise me most.
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up is just understanding that as long as you have the confidence that you'll figure out whatever it throws at you, and you actually do build the competence to solve the problems you face, you'll be fine. And that's as sorted one can get. I mean, unless you're like a trust fund baby who doesn't do anything. And, basically just glides through that. So, closing notes, recent foreign cuisine you've tried that you unexpectedly found to be fun
For the first time?
Sure, yeah.
Recently, for the first time, I've not. Okay, I have an answer. There's this Burmese dish, not the Burmese cuisine,
Okay.
but there's this dish called atto.
Okay.
And this was something that Akash introduced me to in Chennai.
Okay.
So this is like a working class food in Burma.
Okay.
Think of it as the vada pav version of pyramid from Myanmar, right? It's sort of like noodles and like noodle salad kind of territory. And you don't get it in Burma. It's not that kind of dish.
Okay.
We're in like a street stall in Chennai, in like Burmese settlements.
I did not know there were Burmese settlements in Chennai, but that's pretty cool.
Because there was trade routes from Chennai. Yeah. And yeah, that surprisingly caught me off guard because I'm not someone who usually eats like street food. But I really wanted to try it out because it just seemed like an interesting concept. And because till he explained it, it didn't really strike me that there was a Burmese settlement in Chennai.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And the fact that you don't get these in established restaurants. And I would say Burma is probably one of the more well-known Burmese restaurants, I think, in Bangalore. And it's not a Burma type restaurant, like cuisine applying food at all. And that caught me by surprise here.
Wow. So I recently also found out that apparently Bhopal has like a very vibrant Chinese community, which I find very surprising because like why?
In the middle of India.
And on that note, since you said you don't eat street food, have you had good 99 variety dosa?
I've had the Szechuan dosa, yes.
No, but was it good?
Szechuan paneer cheese. Whatever. Because my ex-girlfriend really liked that. So there have been times when I have had to bite for her and finish the remaining also.
Someone's about right. Gotcha.
I would never make that decision for myself.
Noted. All right, but I think that's a wrap.